Welcome back to Moving Pictures, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Predacon Paul. This is your other host,
Decepticon Doug.
And today, we are in the ring with Rocky.
And now...
Hey, Rocky! Watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
But that trick never worked.
This time for sure.
No,
that's not the one. No,
not that one.
Not that one. No. This one right here.
What's a raccoon?
What's a raccoon? It's what you are, stupid.
That's not even a... There we go. Rocky.
So we get there in the end. Yeah, so we're on the road to Creed 2, talking about the Rocky films.
All of them, even the one most people don't discuss.
And by extension, the Creed movies. I've seen some Rocky films. I've seen Rocky and I've seen Creed, but there's a lot of them I haven't actually seen. If you don't know what Rocky's about,
you're probably not watching this video.
We're going to assume, for the most part, that this is for people who've seen Rocky, because, hey, a lot of people have seen Rocky. Be aware there might be some spoilers.
This is your spoiler warning, okay?
Maybe catch up with the films, and as you catch up with the films, you can watch our videos on it. Be a nice interactive experience. I've done that before. I've watched movies specifically so I can watch the review of them.
Oh, yeah.
So we're talking about the very first Rocky today.
The first one.
The very first one. I put Mr. Sylvester Stallone on the map. On every map, basically.
Everywhere.
Yeah. And you are apparently... This is something I learned about Paul pretty recently. You're a huge Rocky fan.
Huge Rocky
fan. So, yeah, what do you...
I'm not like an authority on the subject, but I do have a very strong opinion about the Rocky movies, the characters, and who they are to me, so...
What works so well about Rocky? Why does it stand the test of time the way that it does?
You know, I have no idea.
Cool. Well, thanks for watching, everybody.
Have a good night. Rocky 2 coming soon. You know what? I think what works the most for me with regards to the Rocky movies is the fact that the character Rocky is so likable.
Because, yeah, you see Rocky on his day-to-day life. As we highlighted when we were watching the film, the plot doesn't really get moving until, 45 minutes at least?
At least.
Yeah, you just see Rocky in his day-to-day life. You see a piece of him and who he is and how he interacts with people. It just successfully creates a portrait of a person. He's complicated. He's complex. Even though he's kind of a simple guy, he's a very complicated person because he's so well-intentioned, but he just doesn't...
You can especially see that with his interactions with some of the neighborhood kids, like little Anne Marie or whatever her name is.
Yeah, where he's trying to explain to her, reputation and stuff like that.
And where that's going to lead you in life.
The way that he interacts with the guys who are singing at the street corner, just he's got a camaraderie with the neighborhood.
And that's even before everyone's behind him because he's going to fight the world champion. He's already got this reputation as, like a thumb breaker or a leg breaker. Obviously, because Mick knows, and Mick's life is in the gym, but he still knows, right? But he's still got this great rep with the neighborhood people.
But he's also clearly a guy that doesn't exactly know how to take his life to the next level. He knows what he wants to do, he has no idea about the path to get there. And actually, I relate with that a lot. As I think a lot of creative people do, is that we have an end goal, and we're like, okay, this is sort of the different ways I can see myself being successful. How the hell do I get there?
Well, I don't even think he's even articulated the question in his mind. He's just, I want to be a boxer, so I'm going to go work out at a gym. And then he boxes for chump change. Although I don't know how much $40 is in
70s dollars?
In 1970.
So Rocky gets in a fight, and he makes about $40, which we worked out to be about $190 in adjusted for inflation. So $200, let's say, to get his face pounded in.
He wants to be a fighter because he was taught that you're not too bright, so you better use your body type thing.
Rocky's an easy character to get to know because there's a very short string between his brain and his mouth.
I love it.
Yeah, and that he just says what is on his mind. The moment something comes up in his head, he'll say it. Sometimes it comes out as actually, reasonably smart. Why didn't you break his thumbs, Rocky? He's well, he's could lose his job if his hand's broken, It's
How is he supposed to pay you back if he ain't got no thumbs?
Or sometimes it's just where'd your hat go? And he should be celebrating,
Yeah.
It's just stream the stream of thought, and so you get to know him really easily. It doesn't take much. By the 45-minute mark, we know Rocky pretty well. We see who he's really interested in romantically. We see what he does for a job. We see that he likes dogs. Like all the really important things.
He likes turtles.
Yeah, I like turtles.
And we see that he's a fighter, too.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course, we get to see him in action in the ring, which is a big thing. Like, you have to show what he's like in the ring, where he's at right now. The plot starts to go into motion, which is him getting selected kind of at random by Apollo Creed, who's the world champion.
Undefeated, never been knocked down, usually ends the fight in just a few short rounds. Like, Apollo Creed is not just the world champion, he's never been beat. No one has ever gone the distance with him. No one's ever gone the full 15 rounds. Like, you can tell by the way Rocky talks about him, he's like his hero. It's like, oh man, he's the best.
Yeah, you know, Apollo's the best, so I guess I'll just have to try my best.
As luck would have it, the fighter who's supposed to be the #1 contender for the heavyweight championship of the world ends up breaking his hand in like a sparring match or something. The producer of the fight goes down the entire roster, the entire list of the second heavyweight contender, the third, fourth, fifth, and nobody wants to put their fighter up against Apollo.
Because there's not enough time. The amount of time to train to even get to Apollo's level.
And Apollo even says, like, time nothing. They just don't want to see him get beat. And that's very true. When you have a fighter who is so good that he destroys the #2 fighter in just a few short rounds, he's in a league all his own. So here we've got a heavyweight championship, millions of dollars on the line, and the #1 fighter in the world without an opponent. So he uses his brain and he goes, well, what this fight needs is a novelty. Not a contender, but a novelty. America is the land of opportunity, and on July 4th, Independence Day, July 4th, Apollo Creed is going to give a nobody a chance at the title. That's never been done. It's unheard of.
Probably because it's like really ridiculously unfair.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you've got to... Now, it doesn't mean to say that there aren't fighters out there who would give Apollo a good run that just haven't been discovered yet, who haven't gotten the right opportunities, which is what happens in this movie. But the odds are so far against that fighter, it's not even funny. And that does give a novelty to this whole situation. And then, you know, he painstakingly searches through all the different fighters that are out there, and he chooses Rocky, the Italian stallion, all because of a name. Because the name has novelty. He even says, it sounds like a damn monster movie. I love that line. The Italian stallion versus Apollo Creed. It rolls off the tongue so well. You put that on a poster, and you've got Apollo Creed, and you've got Rocky, you know, looking at each other. Beautiful. The drama, everything writes itself. And now we've got a fight. Rocky now has an opportunity to go toe-to-toe with the world heavyweight champion, even though he has no personal expectation of even winning.
That shows a level of intelligence right there, is that he knows he won't win.
Yeah. So what I think really, really makes the Rocky movie shine, aside from, you know, just like a wonderful script, a wonderful idea, and a really likable character, is the directorial choices. It's kind of a slow burn. When it all happens so fast, and it's kind of a whirlwind, which I think is also a metaphor for what's going on to Rocky himself. Because he ends up getting caught up in this whirlwind that's kind of like taking him on this ride to this championship fight that he himself didn't quite earn. There's a lot of like really, really keen and wonderful moments that you can pick up on, especially when it comes to how Rocky views himself across from another character in the movie. For instance, we've got Paulie, somebody who, for all intents and purposes, is not even in the same league as Rocky. Rocky's an athlete. He's a fighter.
Like physically.
Physically, yeah.
Yeah, he's just a regular guy.
Yeah, and well, he's got a baseball bat and he's smashing, you know, his house, and he's talking shit about Adrian. And Rocky stands his ground. He doesn't seem uncomfortable really in the presence of that kind of violence because he's a leg breaker himself. You know, he may have a heart of gold, but I'm pretty sure he's broken a few thumbs in his time.
Probably has.
To a guy like Paulie, who's not really that big a threat to him, and to someone who he might be friends with, but I think more or less he hangs around with Paulie because he likes Adrian. He's interested in her. Even in Paulie's house, Rocky has status. So he stands up to him and he's a lot more comfortable. But then Rocky's in his own house, and you've got Mick. He comes in and, you know, hat in hand, almost like literally, hat in hand, asking him to be his trainer. And this is after they had a falling out at the gym. Mick gave away his locker to that bum in the ring, who then makes fun of Rocky for it, to rub salt in the wound. And Rocky, he's asking me, why you treat me like, what does he say? I want to know. He's like, you want to know? I want to know. It's like, because you're a 2-bit loan shark leg breaker. You had the talent, you got the heart, but you're down. And, he's basically tearing him down, and Rocky's like, it's a living, Even in that situation, you can see that he looks up to Mick, in that he's not telling him he wants to know, he's loudly begging for him to tell him. He wants his approval. And then when they're in Rocky's house, Rocky hides in his bathroom from Mick, who's not yelling at him, he's just asking him to be his trainer. Because Mick has something to prove too. And he has something to give Rocky. And then Rocky, there's even this great moment where he comes out of the bathroom, sees Mick still there, he turns around, goes back in. It's the only place Rocky feels safe enough to just really let it all out, and then Mick leaves. And then after Rocky lets it all out, he realizes how it sounds out loud, and it's not just in his head, he's not just holding it in. And then he finally goes and he extends an olive branch to Mick, which is a great moment. And it really shows that John Avildsen has a great eye for being able to convey status in a movie without having to come right out and say it. And it also goes to show just how good a writer Sylvester Stallone is. I'm not sure how much of his original work that is just his alone is in the movie. I'm not sure how much, because sometimes a writing team gets a hold of it and things change.
It's doctored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But all the team members that were on board, they really knew what they were doing, and that's one of the shining things about this movie, I think.
Yeah. On the subject of directing, I think that there's some very stylistic visual choices. There's a lot of very simple camera shots just following him as Rocky's kind of going throughout his day. But during the montages while he's training and you see him part of it was out of necessity because as we learned, a lot of the shots were guerrilla and so they didn't have the permit, so they kind of had to hide the fact that they had a camera and they couldn't tell the extras that they were shooting because they're real people on the street.
Who just happened to see this van, which God knows what it looks like.
Yeah.
With its doors open with a camera guy and a director going, all right, Rock, run.
Yeah.
We get Stallone running behind this van in the middle of a Philadelphia neighborhood.
The necessity brought about something stylistic, which was this gritty shooting style of very shaky camera, very raw footage, which really brings you into Rocky's shoes. There's times where you're right there with him because the camera's right there with him because they gotta stay close so they can
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, at that point in time, there's gigantic film cameras.
Which is probably open your jacket.
Probably why they shot so early in the morning, because there's not a lot of people out to report it. But it all brings about this interesting visual style. So low budget filmmaking, so much of it is learning to make your limitations your strengths, and I think that this film is sort of a perfect example of that.
And I like John's approach too to. Especially in those montage scenes where all this information we're getting is from a.
There's an interview with Stallone.
If I'm not mistaken, it was for the movie Rocky Balboa. I could be wrong. Anyways, we're going to link to it in the description. We just watched it on YouTube. The choice of John, I'm just going to call him John because I feel like I'm butchering his last name. The choice that John made to exhaust Sylvester Stallone to the point where. This is his baby. This is his brainchild. This is his shot. And he wants to I don't want to go anymore. I don't want to run anymore. My body is giving up. And he's like, no, use that. Use it. Because he wanted to show Rocky when he was fighting that uphill battle to try and...
Because in so many ways, we know that Stallone's story and Rocky's story were basically the same story in a different context.
Yeah.
They're headed in the same direction, and I think the director knew that, or if he didn't, then he just had a good intuition that he couldn't even fully explain. But if he might have just known, okay, well, I see exactly what this movie is, and I see exactly what it is on a personal level for Stallone.
It's the right man for the job, and it really shows, especially in that scene where he's running on the pier. You can tell that this is his last burst. To the point where if you've ever sprinted before and you're already tired, it's those moments where your body is now running, trying to generate that motion from all your muscles working in unison to the point where it's not just a jog, you're now sprinting full tilt and your body is now using all of its energy for this one goal, and that is to move forward.
Yeah.
Visually, it works so well. But going back to talking about the directorial choices, There's another scene in particular that I think plays really, really well for how the movie ends. You see, Carl Weathers' character, obviously he plays Apollo Creed. His character doesn't really take the fight seriously. He looks at Rocky the way his record shows. He doesn't really view him as a threat, so he doesn't really take his training seriously. They even touch on that in the commentators before the fight starts. They even say, look, Apollo Creed's not really looking like his best, but, this is going to be a really interesting 3 rounds. And there's this wonderful scene where Rocky's training in the meat locker, and he's just going hard on the bull, and you can see the intensity, the focus, the drive, and all of that focus and intensity and drive is because Rocky the character fully understands down to his core that if he doesn't work his ass off, if he doesn't push himself to the brink every time he trains, he's going to get killed. And he knows that. So he pushes himself. He takes it seriously. As he's training, you can then see, I think it's Apollo's manager. He's watching Rocky fight and he's like, Apollo, he's like, you need to watch this. I think this guy means business. And Apollo's like, yeah, I mean business too. And he keeps telling everyone, you're going to go down in 3. Usually his predictions come true. He's used to saying 4 rounds, and that's usually because the person can last 4 rounds, and then Apollo opens up, and then you're dead. He underestimates Rocky so much, his resolve, what makes him a good fighter, that rock hard jaw, and the heart, the inability to quit. Like, why don't you just give up? Well, I never really learned how. Well, that's Rocky. He's that character. He doesn't take it seriously. And because of that, when he shows up to the fight, Apollo Creed, the champion, doesn't show up. Apollo Creed, the businessman, shows up. And he gets one hell of a surprise in that first round when he gets knocked down. And he gets a hell of a surprise when he starts laying into Rocky, and Rocky keeps getting back up. It's the fact that Rocky keeps getting up and Apollo keeps having to drive harder and harder for that knockdown and that knockout, which isn't coming. He starts to exhaust himself to the point where he starts to get sloppy with his defense, and bang, gets shot in the ribs, breaks a rib, and he's down to the point where he's fighting one-armed, and he wins by a split decision. I believe in my heart that if Apollo Creed would have just taken the fight seriously, he would have annihilated Rocky in the 3rd round, exactly like he said he would have.
I said at one point, the story between Rocky and Apollo was a little bit like the tortoise and the hare, and that the tortoise was taking the race seriously, the hare just took a nap and didn't worry about it at all, and as a result, the tortoise won. Well, I mean, in this case, of course, as we all know, Rocky didn't win,
but he did the one thing nobody could.
But he still exceeded everyone's expectations,
by far and above,
including his own, actually.
Yeah.
There's
this wonderful moment where he has the realization. This is after he finishes walking around, seeing the ring and then really taking it all in. And he realizes, I don't have a hope of winning this fight. So what I want to do is the one thing that nobody's ever done. Just go the distance. Let's go the full 15 rounds with Apollo Creed, and then I'll be happy. That's all he wants. So all that training that he's doing, everything that goes with it, like boosting his strength, his stamina, all that stuff, was just to make sure he would survive the fight. And he did.
There's such interesting, complex relationships all throughout the film. And between Rocky and Apollo, between Rocky and Paulie, between Rocky and Adrian, such interesting, complex, real, grounded relationships.
What I love, and this is something that I never really noticed until I think you pointed it out, after Adrian and Rocky sort of become a thing, she comes out of her shell. She starts to be more of a presence.
And she stands up to Paulie.
Yes, she stands up to him. He's a friggin' bully. I'm not really sure what their history is. I think he took care of her or something.
Yeah.
He thinks that she's slow because she's shy and scared. I'm not sure if that's a product of their upbringing.
It's not very clear now. But the point is, you can kind of tell that the history's there. Mm-hmm. And that's almost more important than having to say it. Is that the history is present.
Yeah.
And it's carried in the characters and their decisions. So there's a scene that I think a lot of people who maybe are watching Rocky for the first time would get very uncomfortable with, and that's the scene where Rocky and yes, exactly. Rocky and Adrian, it's right after the first date, and she's trying to push him away. And I think at face value, it may look a little bit
a little rapey?
Yeah, exactly. Especially like right now in the whole like Me Too movement, like time period that we're in right now, people are going to be like red flags are going to be going up all over the place. Now I would make that scene very different. At the same time, like if you really kind of look at like there's more complicated things at play in that scene that I think a lot of people won't catch on to, because there's so much that's not said. But I think that there's sort of like an understanding between the two of them that the relationship and the attraction is mutual. Like he can see that she's holding back from what she really wants. Most people are going to see her saying like no and be like, well, she said no. And you know, and honestly, like that's fair. That's a fair kind of like criticism.
Very.
If I were to redirect this scene like nowadays, I would stage it very differently. But at the same time, like what they were trying to accomplish, I think, was this sort of like this woman who's kind of paralyzed in her own shell, and she is not going for what she wants because of like her just maybe complacency in life, her relationship with her brother, things like holding her back.
Her mother telling her that she's not
desirable.
Not desirable, so she better start working on her brain because she doesn't have much of a body. So she doesn't think that she's attractive to the opposite sex.
She's in an uncomfortable situation, but like in a way that's good for her in the long run. Rocky is trying to, and you know, maybe it is for his own selfish means to some extent, but he's trying so hard to break her out of it. Kind of like bring her to life with someone who actually legitimately loves her for who she is, which she's lacking in her life. But so much of that is not said. You kind of have to almost like do like a film studies thing on the movie and the scene and their relationship and like...
Because it does come off as a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But we, the audience, are sort of along for the ride as well. But he does say, I really want to kiss you, and if you don't want to kiss me back, that's okay. There's this wonderful part where he like leans in and kisses her, and then he kisses her like sort of like here, like sort of beside the mouth. You can't really see it. I'm so focused on her in that scene. It's just like Sly says in that interview that he's in, where he's talking about how like all you see in that scene is her. Here's Rocky kissing her gently on the cheek, sort of like beside her lips. And there's this really like powerful, subtle movement that she makes where she sort of meeks away from it, and then he kisses her here, and as he pulls away, giving her space, she kind of goes back and sort of like goes to plant another one and then stops herself, which goes to show that Talia, she's such a powerhouse actress that there's this, you can see the desire in the subtlety of her choices. You can see the bells are ringing and she's terrified, but she also is overcoming that fear to go after what she wants. And I think that's what this scene is about. And the turtles that he bought from her, I don't know if he really likes turtles or whatever, he's got turtles. But he's got those turtles, and I think she's that turtle. She's coming out of her shell.
Yeah, maybe it is like, maybe the turtles were symbolism the whole time. yeah. I mean, it could very well be. I mean, it's, you know, so many directorial choices are intentional.
What do you think about this? Because he gets the turtles a log, but the log wasn't good for him because they would fall on their back and they couldn't get up. Maybe Paulie's that log.
Maybe, yeah.
We just figured out Rocky.
But you know,
it's not about boxing; it's about turtles, yo.
Yeah, I like turtles.
And the fact that Talia was a last-minute choice. Her and Carl Weathers, and they were perfect in the role. With the role of Adrian, anyone could have played her a little too. It's the subtlety, the subtle choices that she makes, and then finally when she has that explosion against Paulie and stands up for herself, that you really like see her, just how strong she really is as an actress. The range and her ability, and like everything she's been holding in is finally released. You know, finally when she's with Rocky and she's all comfortable and she no longer sits like this. She sits more open. You know, she sits more like she's more comfortable in her own skin, in her own body, in her own house.
But Paulie's interesting because he's not a villain. He's just very flawed. And there's a lot of characters like this. Even like the loan shark boss that Rocky has. There's no real villain of the film. You know, everyone is kind of like shown in their different complex lights. Like, there's times where Paulie is just he's an outright ass, and you want to punch him in the face.
But he's an asshole because he cares, and that's the only way he knows how to show he cares.
And also it doesn't help that, like, you know, obviously when he's drinking, he's not able to keep himself in check.
But he also comes through for Rocky as well. The issue with Rocky is the fact that in the big leagues you've got like what? promoters. You've got people that are on TV that want to talk to you. You've got all this stuff out there that if you're not ready for it, if you're not trained on how to deal with it, you can find yourself spiraling out of control and get taken advantage of really easily. Paulie sees it as an opportunity to make a little bit of extra change on the side and to also help Rock with his image. A lot of it is self-motivated and self-driven, but he also has Rock's best interest at heart too. Mick is his manager and his trainer, so he's going to keep him out of trouble, things like that. So he's surrounded himself with all these people that are now going to help him enter this world that he has no clue how to navigate. He'd be completely lost. You can see it in interviews. It's very simple. Yo, Adrian, I'm on the TV. You know, stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas you see Carl Weathers, Apollo Creed, he's sitting back. He's got promoters here. He's got promoters here. He's talking about them all. Oh yeah, make sure you send two dozen roses to them and make sure the cameras see it. I want my barber there because I want to look my best when I'm pounding this Italian stallion into the ground. He's in control. He's in his realm. Rocky's not. Get to see a little bit more of like how helpful Paulie can be is in that world. Paulie's greedy. He understands that world.
He wants to dip in the pool.
Yeah. Even if it's a little dip, it's still a dip, right?
Yeah. So when we kind of like think about a certain era of action stars, you know, we got Schwarzenegger and we got Van Damme, and you know, like, and we lump in Stallone in that category of like, you know, the 80s action star because he was like in the Rambo films and stuff like that, and then we sort of think like, oh, we love them even though they're not very good actors.
Couldn't be further from the truth.
But Stallone's performance, it really is very real, very genuine, very grounded, and very good. Stallone's had a few stinkers in his time. I am the law, or whatever. Yeah. You know, when he got kind of lost in his own hubris a little bit during a certain period of time.
But it was also the 90s.
Yeah. I mean, also, you know, and also some of that is the project that you're on and the directors you're working with. Like, there's a lot of factors.
And I can't believe for one second that it wasn't fun to play Judge Dredd.
Yeah, true.
Right? Or, you know, to work on Demolition Man or Cliffhanger.
Right.
Any one of those movies that he was in.
And this is like the start of his career as we know it. And he starts off with a dynamite performance, like a really good performance. Everything he says, sounds like Rocky. It sounds like that's like who the character is. And you know, like a lot of subtleties. He's not over the top.
He's honest.
Yeah, he's a very honest is a great way to put it. It's a very honest performance, and it's raw and it's real, and which of course again like matches the directorial style and everything. He had to fight for that part.
For those of you who don't know, Stallone this isn't just a dynamite performance. Now, why Stallone I think stands apart from a lot of the action heroes out there who existed in the 80s and 90s, aside from maybe Arnold, because Arnold was a self-made man too. He had specific goals. He worked hard for it, and I think he had like 6 businesses before he even made his first movie. The guy was a worker. Sylvester Stallone didn't just embody the character Rocky because he was perfect for the part. He wrote the damn film. He was watching a fight with Muhammad Ali, and in a moment, like he was an actor and he traveled to California to make it in the business, and he was always writing his own films, and he was living in poverty. And then he went and watched a boxing match, and Muhammad Ali, arguably one of the greatest boxers of all time, gets knocked down by a nobody, and that nobody is now immortalized. And that was the catalyst for Sylvester Stallone going on a writing frenzy for 3 days straight with a typewriter and coming up with the finished product. Well, it wasn't finished.
The first draft.
But the first draft of what we now know as the Rocky movie. After he pitched his movie, he was made offer after offer after offer to the point where they started at like $60,000 and it ended at almost $360,000 because they wanted his script that badly because they had all of these great actors lined up. Like Robert Redford was one of them, Burt Reynolds was one of them. He was in his prime. He stuck to his guns and he said, no, this is my baby and I will never be able to live with myself if this movie actually makes it. So he turns the money down. He had to sell his dog, Butkus, who's in the movie as well. And he got his dog after he got the budget for the film, and then you can really see the love. Butkus really loves him.
That dog is great.
Yeah, he's bouncing around him and like, I love you so much, and it really makes the scene. And it's like Adrian's gift to him. He's like, you really wanted this dog? Here you go. But like that's how down on his luck he was. He had to sell his dog because he couldn't afford to feed him, and he said, no, I'm going to make this film. And sure enough, he made it.
Yeah.
This is his baby. He's not just the actor playing Rocky, he is Rocky. And there you go. That's what sets him apart from a lot of the action heroes that we grew up with. Even if you haven't seen a Rocky movie, you'd know Rocky. You'd know, yo, Adrian, hey, Paulie.
Or at least, like, making it to the top of the stairs and going like, ah. Like, yeah, that's
iconic.
It's right up there with the most iconic scenes in cinema history.
The story itself has had a positive impact on my life, I think. Because the movie's about working hard and chasing your dreams. Sometimes the right opportunity will land itself in your lap. And if you haven't been working hard, you will not be ready to seize that opportunity when it's there. And Rocky worked, and he was ready. He was ready to at least go the distance with the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. The last few times I've been at the gym, one of the Rocky movies has been on the TV, on my treadmill. So I'm just like, this is awesome. And here I am running. Well, there's no sound because I don't carry my headphones.
But in your heart.
But in my heart?
Yeah.
You know?
It's that one, and then I have the tiger.
Yeah.
And it's made an impression on a lot of people, which is why it's considered a cinematic classic and has like 7 sequels and has resonated for so long. Like, what is it, 30 years later?
40 years.
40 years later? Yeah.
So Sylvester Stallone had a viewing with like 900 of the people of the Directors Guild or the Academy or whatnot, and when he was watching the movie, he had his mother with him, and he's listening for those moments where, well, this is a joke, I wonder if they think it's funny, and they're not laughing at the right moment, and he feels like the movie's not getting received the way it was intended to be received, and by the end of it, everyone leaves without really like saying much, and he sits there brooding for a little bit with his mother beside him in an empty theater, thinking about how he blew his one chance and his world just came crashing down for that moment. He says in that interview as well that there was a 3 flights of stairs he had to go down from the theater to leave, and on his way down he was thinking about going back to his life and
saying he gave it a shot and he failed.
Yeah, at least I gave it a shot, and at the bottom of the stairs all 900 people from the theater were waiting there and they started clapping. That's a very magical moment. All of his hard work, his vision, like his dreams, those sleepless nights, the body aches, the punishment, like he wasn't just making a boxing movie, he was getting his ass kicked every day and hoping it would pay off, hoping that it would make this great piece of cinema that he intended it to be, and it came true. That in and of itself is, I think, the message of Rocky. It's not just, if you work hard, dreams come true. Let's say it wasn't really discovered as a cinematic classic until way after its time. People rediscovered it later on and went, you know what? This is actually a really good movie, and then it became like a cult classic. Let's say that happened. In the end, he still gave it a shot, and he poured his blood, his sweat, and his tears, every ounce of himself into that one movie. And there it is, the finished product.
And ultimately, that's something to be proud of. And it just so happens we live in the universe where everything worked out and Rocky took off.
Yeah, thank God.
I can say that I've seen Rocky before, and I liked it more this time than when I watched it the first time. Because it's the kind of film that's really meaty and there's a lot to dig into. Of course, take it in once to just take in the story. And then after that, every time you watch it, you'll probably catch more and more of the subtext and the relationships and the details of the world around Rocky, and it's going to continue to reward you. And again, that's one of the reasons why it's still a classic and still revered today, is that there's a lot of details and a lot of complexities that reward your loyalty as a viewer. Thus concludes the first episode of In the Ring with Rocky, as we are on the road to Creed 2. So please let us know, what do you think of Rocky in the comments down below.
Did the movie have a positive impact on your life?
I'm definitely more curious about what Rocky's meant to you over the years.
Yeah. Your first time viewing Rocky. If you were alive and you actually saw this in theaters, I want to know what that was like.
If you like our takes on Rocky, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. And of course, check out our other shows if you like video games and TV shows and
Beast Wars.
Thank you so much for watching.
As always, tell your mom.